This would have been 1985. And I went in 1985 to Nairobi, to the Women's Conference in Nairobi. And when I was there, I met all these incredible South African women who had come via Underground Railroad because they weren't citizens in South Africa, if you can imagine, at that time. So they didn't have passports. So they had come through this underground network in Africa to Nairobi. And they were the most incredible, powerful women I had ever met in my life. And so I decided after the conference that I would go to South Africa and, put myself in service to these women and their struggle. And so I went alone. Flew down to Johannesburg. I had one name that these women had given to me, this is the first person you should contact when you get here. Her name was Helen Joseph. She was a white woman who was known as one of the mothers of liberation in South Africa. It was with her that Nelson and Winnie Mandela left their children when they were on the run or in jail. So I called her, and I got immediately in with the underground, which at that time was the underground. It was all the banned people in South Africa. That was the era when everyone was banned. So through her, I got connected, like really fast. And she would tell me where to go and what to do and who to talk to. And, then we would meet on street corners. And I would go to these gatherings where Gandhi's granddaughter was, Amina Kachelia, is her name. And she was a good friend of Helen's. I ended up staying with Helen. Thereafter, whenever I was in South Africa, I stayed with Helen until she died. She was the first person that Nelson Mandela went to visit when he came out of prison. So she told me to get in touch with this young man who had been part of the anti-conscription campaign in South Africa, and it had spent a white guy who had spent 2 years in prison for refusing to serve in the South African Defense Force. So I called him. His name was Richard Steele, and he was in Durban. And I called him to arrange an interview and to photograph. So I went down to Durban, and I got there. And when I got there, we went into his office, and we had barely started the interview when a phone call came in. And I could see that he was visibly getting extremely upset with the phone call. He put down the phone and he said, "I'm sorry, I have to go. There's a problem where I live." And I think I knew, I can't remember if I knew, I must have known. He lived in the Phoenix Settlement, which is the community that Gandhi created when he was a lawyer in South Africa. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Gandhi was a lawyer in South Africa in 1904. And this is where he had his first experiences of racism, because he was considered a person of color in South Africa, whereas in India he was just an Indian, and he was very well educated. He was a lawyer, but he was thrown off a train for sitting in the white compartment in South Africa. So he attributes his experiences in South Africa with the development of his philosophy of nonviolent civil disobedience. So while he was in South Africa, he did lots of things, but one of the things he did is created the Phoenix Settlement, which it was a community, an interracial community in South Africa in the 1900s, which was really radical, and a newspaper, and all kinds of things went on from there, and it was just this little community that still exists, or still existed in 1985. and was still a community dedicated to, people living together, of mixed races living together. So he said that the Phoenix settlement was on the verge of being attacked by Encampment. Now, I don't know if you remember Encampment, but Encampment was the black group that the United States and other Western countries were trying to support as an antidote to the ANC, the African National Congress, in the struggle in South Africa. It was sort of like the Contras. It was like a, puppet type of situation where they were paying them, and they were fighting the ANC. It was the internecine. It was like the divide and conquer tactic. But everyone in South Africa knew this. Everyone knew that U.S. money and British money was in Inkatha. So when we got to Phoenix settlement, so he said, "Would you like to come with me?" I said, he said, "I have to go. Would you like to come?" I said, "Of course I'd like to come." I knew this was Gandhi's settlement. So we went, and when we got there, the place was in chaos. It was like people loading up trucks. It was a sense of frantic, intensity. And as soon as we got there, he said, here are the keys to Gandhi's house. You can go and hang out there if you'd like. Because his girlfriend was there. They had to pack up the house. Inkatha was coming to destroy the place because they were keeping 66 black refugees in the old printing press, and Inkatha was coming after them for that.
Hold on, just.
I'm glad you're getting this story. This is my favorite story of my life, practically one of them.
Okay, so then the printing.
So just picture this chaos, and down below, it's on a little hillside, the Phoenix settlement, and down below, smoke, fire, just everything is in a turmoil, which was often the case in South Africa at that time. A lot of violence, a lot of killing, a lot of scary stuff. So, and I had already been there for a while, so I sort of knew the ropes. So I take the keys and I go down to Gandhi's house, this little tiny house. And I go inside, and it's like a monastery inside. It's like a meditation hall. It's a completely empty room with just the pictures of Gandhi's teachers on an altar. And the presence of it, it was just unbelievable to walk into this place. And then there was one other small room that was a library that had, books and papers and stuff like that of Gandhi's. So I, photographer that I am, meditator that I am, nonviolent activist in the spirit of Gandhi that I am, I feel like I have walked into, I can't even say what it was. It was so powerful. So I opened all the windows, and the first thing I did is I meditated, and then I asked, in the meditation, I asked the spirit of Gandhi to come to me, come through me, live in me. And all the windows are open, and I'm just, I'm photographing inside the house, and then all of a sudden I see 3 black men with machine guns running past the window. And all of a sudden I am in terror. Terror in my body. And then I see, out of another window, I see one of those big tanks, they were called the hippos, come crashing through with the South African Defense Force, and all of them jumping out with all their guns at the ready. And then I hear Richard screaming my name. And I'm just filled with terror. I think that I am going to be die in the crossfire. Whatever this is that's going on, it's really scary. So I hear him screaming my name, and really what I want to do in that moment is go into the library and cover myself with books and hide. But instead, I feel this, it's like this surge coming through my body. And I grab my camera bag, and it's just like pushing myself through a steel door. That's what it felt like at the moment, and that's what I remember it as. That I pushed my body through a steel door to go through that fear and to the voice that was calling me. So I run toward it, and I'm just sure I'm going to be, killed. And I run up to it, I run up to where the voice was, and as I get there, all the guns come down. Everybody puts their guns down, because I am a foreign journalist. The whole situation goes, wha, because I am a foreign journalist. That's the only reason that it didn't turn into a conflagration at that moment. And it just was like, it was like the most bizarre sensation of this intense fear, all this potential for violence. Wow. Moments before, I had been asking the spirit of Gandhi to come through me. That night, that house was completely demolished. Completely demolished by hand, by violence. Rubble to rubble. So then I went back about a week later with this guy who was this really very, very beautiful Danish, Dan Rather of Denmark, tall, Peter Jennings of Denmark. We went there together to this place and saw the destruction. It was just completely, the whole place was demolished. And he and I stood in the rubble and cried, the two of us. And as I was weeping, I looked down, and in the rubble was Om. And I reached down and I pulled up this paper, and I'll show it to you. I have it upstairs. This paper, and as we were crying, and I looked down, and Om is down below my feet, and I pull it up, and it is on the one side it's Sanskrit, on the other side it's typed out English, and my eyes fall upon a true human being is not attached to the things of this world. Just like that, it's gone. So that was the story. And from then on, I have had this feeling of being able to go through any kind of, fear. The power of it. That's what I knew. Because when I went into that situation, all the guns just went down. Yeah. Not that I walked peacefully into it. I didn't. I ran into it. Terrified. And I didn't really know what was happening. And Richard told me later that the reason that he had called to me was because I was a foreign journalist. And somehow he felt that could diffuse the situation. And that these 68 people who were surrounded, in Kata, the guys with, I mean, it was just, you know, and situations like that were happening all the time in South Africa. People were being killed every day. Situations like that.